introduction is going to be a little bit longer than normal because I have a story to tell. Okay? First of all, one thing that Carolyn said to me just a moment ago was that I talk to lots of interesting people. And this is a true fact. And this is something I desperately love about the job I do. The number of very exciting people I meet in my travels is phenomenal, and that is something I'm really going to miss when I move away from the industry I'm in. John and I met. John called me out. He's renovating his home and wants to bring some daylight in, and we met there and we spoke for about 3 minutes about skylight, and then we spoke for about 45 minutes about the renovation he's doing. Which is phenomenal, but that's another story. We got to talking about what he does, and it actually ties in very well with what a few people in this room do and with what I do. I've told you I do a podcast. My podcast is about dyslexia, and I have come to the belief that I fall into that category. And dyslexia, in today's age, one of the biggest problems they're running into is that most people don't believe it's real. And kids with dyslexia in high schools are having a major problem getting the accommodations that they require to be able to put them on a level footing with the rest of their peers. And that's why it fits with me and why my ears pricked up. But me being the way I am, I just want to give you an insight as to how my brain works. Okay? When I got to John's place, he said, yeah, you were recommended by a friend of mine by the name of Kevin Smith. I said, oh yeah. Where does he come from? This is a true story. And he went Mount Kainai. Now immediately, number one, I do not recognise Mount Kainai as a mountain. I don't know if there is anywhere around Toowoomba that you can look up and actually see it as a mountain. I recognise Mount Lofty, you can see from somewhere, but it's like a little bit of a mountain. I do not, it is not a mountain, and it blows my mind to think that it is. So I immediately thought of Mount Tyson. And when I thought of Mount Tyson, the most memorable person out there, whose name is probably nothing like Kevin Smith, was renovating a house, and at the back of his house, he's actually added on an old schoolroom, an old schoolhouse. And in that schoolhouse, the windows are over 5 foot high, the bottom of them, so that the kids couldn't look out and be distracted through their classes at the beginning of the day. But that's where my mind went. So as we're talking backwards and forwards, about 4 times Kevin's name came up, and my brain went straight to Mount Tyson. Finally, I said, look, we were talking about what John does, which he's about to tell you. And I said, come and talk to me. He said, what type of business do you have in your business club? I said, well, we've got this. And, oh, he said, what's the name of the accountant? I said, oh, Kevin Smith. And so that's how my brain works, isn't it? What John does at university level, and we need it at high school and we need it at primary school level, is he takes people with disabilities. And let me point out that I don't see dyslexia as a disability, I actually see it as a superpower, but that's another story. And he assists them to get the accommodations that they require to put them on a level playing field with the rest of the students in the university. And I'd love you to come up here and tell us all about it.
So Steve mentioned that when he goes around, he gets to meet lots of interesting people, so I don't know where it comes in with me, but I'm going to read a few notes off my phone because it saves me printing out my notes. But first of all, thank you for having me come along. My name's John Napier. My position title is Coordinator of Disability Resources. So it doesn't even on its own really explain what I do, but I'll talk a little bit about what I do. I'll give you some statistics and then I'll be available for, I guess, just some questions. But, how does somebody like me relate to coming and talking to a group like you guys? Well, in Australia, 1 in 5 Australians will have a mental health condition at some stage during their life. And it's only a little bit less prevalent to disabilities as a whole. So nearly 20% of Australians have a disability of some kind. So that, under the definition of disability, it just means something that's going to impact differently on your life than what somebody who might be considered normal would have an impact on them. So at a room this size, where we've got roughly 20, there's two people in the room that are likely to have a condition that impacts on their life in some way. Now, so of that 1 in 5 people, nearly 20% of them, so 20% of 20%, will have a disability that's visible. So that means 80% of people who have a disability will have a condition that you cannot see. Walking down the street, you're not going to be aware that they have a disability, that they have a condition that is impacting on their lives in some way. It's probably really good, but you would have noticed in the last few years there's been a lot more of a ramping up of promotion and material available and information about mental health conditions. So that's an example of a condition that is unseen. So depression, anxiety, we've got Beyond Blue out there, Lifeline and a lot of the suicide intervention programs and stuff. They're the types of things we're often talking about, but there's also a lot of unseen conditions. Dyslexia is an example, ASD, autism spectrum disorder, or Asperger's, depending on which side of the fence you sit. There's, umpteen conditions that people may have to different degrees that are certainly going to impact on their lives. So, as business people, it's very likely that you may have staff that you employ. You will most certainly have clients that you work with and other businesses that you interact with as well, where you're likely to be talking to people with a disability. You may not even know it because they will be one of the 80% of people that have a disability that you can't see. Disabilities you can see, and often when we talk about disabilities, people in their mind they go straight to a wheelchair and accessibility. They think, okay, if I want to make my building accessible, we'll put in a wheelchair ramp. So often that's people's first thought. And in fact, last week I went to a meeting and we had a body of a group of people, I guess, like you guys, but not business people, another group, and they came to the meeting and they were saying, how can we promote acceptance of people with a disability in our community? And she brought out a piece of paper and she read out all the ideas they've got. And their great idea was, we'll put somebody in a wheelchair for a day, we'll put another person with headphones on for a day and mimic them having a hearing impairment, and we'll put another person with goggles on so they can't see for the day. And we'll promote, acceptance and give people some understanding of people with disability. Now, where I come from, that is just I actually found a little bit offensive to tell you the truth. Blind people, people in a wheelchair, people with hearing impairment or deaf, yes, they are legitimate disabilities, and I do everything I can to be accepting and promote the services we have to offer and provide them with opportunity. But when more than 80% of the people around with a disability have a condition that is unseen, we're forgetting about them in many cases as well. So disabilities is everybody with a condition, not just people in a wheelchair, not just people who are deaf. There are so many more conditions that are going to impact on people. So my role within the university is to provide opportunity for these people to study. And it's a very good point. Historically, the education system, starting at primary school, high school, has been very poor at providing what some people need in order to study. And special education units within schools are getting better, but it wasn't that long ago that they didn't exist. And if somebody had a higher end disability or a significant impairment, they were often in mainstream classes and they were just being left behind. The impact on society of that is only 50% of people with a disability are actually employed. So that means out of you could work out the number of Australians with a disability, it's roughly 20%. 20% of those people have an unseen condition, but only 50% million, and 50% of those people don't have a job. So 2 million people within Australia don't have a job simply because they have a disability. And of those 2 million, 80% of them have a condition that you can't see. So they're not people in a wheelchair, they're not people who are blind or deaf. They're people with an unseen condition. Asperger's, dyslexia, whatever, mental health, anxiety, depression. So we're talking about big numbers of people in Australia who are simply not working because they have a condition. Now, does anyone know much about Asperger's, ASD? There's a couple of people who, you might have heard of the condition, but ASD, somebody with ASD won't say that they even have a disability because it doesn't stop them doing anything. They'll be physically able in every way. But somebody with ASD thinks differently. It's a communication type disorder. There are a number of famous people who are on the spectrum with ASD. Who's the funny guy who did Ron Williams? Yes, I was even thinking of a guy who did Ace Ventura. What's his name? Jim Carrey. A lot of people speculate he's on the spectrum. Things like that. And it doesn't stop you doing something, but you'll communicate differently. And that can absolutely be a strength. A lot of people with ASD are big into IT types of jobs because they don't need to talk maybe openly or present openly. Somebody with ASD may struggle to do something like what I'm doing right now, but it doesn't mean that they can't be a great employee. Somebody with ASD is going to really struggle to even do an interview. They're going to struggle to put in a job application because that involves outward communication. They're going to struggle that if they're accepted an interview to even show up, and then they're certainly going to struggle to promote themselves, talk about themselves and talk openly. Yes, they may be one of the best employees you'll ever have, but we're not giving them opportunities in the workforce because we don't accommodate. The way that we employ people isn't set up to be accepting of people with this one condition, ASD. And again, that's an example of how society is holding back the opportunities that we have for people with a disability. And so I guess a question for you guys to ponder on is how might you be inclusive in how you conduct your business? How might you be more open to having somebody with a disability work for you? And what recruitment and retention strategies are you using that are going to be more inclusive and attractive for people with a disability? Because there's, 2 million people unemployed simply because of their condition. Anyway, going back to what I do at university, I'm not an employer, I'm an employee of the university, but my role is to make things possible for the students. And so I will conduct an interview with the student. We have a whole team of us who will do this. At USQ alone, we have about 800 registered students. So they're students who have registered with us as having a disability and that will require some type of adjustment to be made to their status.
How many students does USQ have?
I think off the top of my head about 27,000. That's external.
That's a long way short of 20% are actually registered.
Correct, and I'll get to that stuff as well. But so we've got about 800 students who have registered that needing adjustments. Now, an adjustment doesn't mean that we will change the content for them. If you want a university degree, you need to be able to prove that you have the knowledge and skills to be awarded that piece of paper. But in some cases, you may not be able to provide evidence of that in the same way as somebody who is fully able. An example of that might be, I know I've worked with David in the past through his sign interpretation, but we have students who are deaf. Somebody who is deaf often can't speak verbally, but they can speak using sign and other communication methods. But if you have a presentation to do to a group like this, and if I was unable to speak, that would be very difficult. So an adjustment we might make would be to have a sign interpreter who I could sign to, who would then speak my words to you. So that's an adjustment. Another adjustment might be at the other end of the scale. Somebody breaks their arm, they have an exam tomorrow. How do they write their exam? Well, I might organise for a scribe for them, or organise for instead of handwriting to use a computer, because they might be able to type one-handed multiple choice exam or something. That's another adjustment. And it will really as needed for that individual. The service we do is individualised because even students with the same condition, it will impact them on in different ways. And so everything we do is personalised and specific for that individual. So at USG, I'll go back, we have 800 students out of 27,000 roughly that are registered. Obviously, still 20% of our students are going to have a condition of some kind. But of those conditions, not all of them are going to impact on your studies. Some of those conditions will allow you to study. It may just impact on the way that you work. And even when you are at work, you may not necessarily need an adjustment. So somebody with, say, an anxiety condition, they're going to be fully able. Social anxiety. Social anxiety is where you have difficulty in crowds of people. They become a bit withdrawn perhaps. So they may not suit a job in, promotions or something, but they may be great at working with small groups. So somebody with social anxiety may be a very great employee as well. So they might not need an adjustment at university level. So that's why we only have 800 registered students. But that's 800 of them that we are providing adjustments of some kind for. So a few other little statistics, I guess, that I wanted to point out. I've got through most of them. That's right. Yeah, the last one I really wanted to talk about, I guess, was about yourself, I suppose. I've gone through the numbers that, 1 in 5 or 20% of us, 20 of us in the room, 4 of us at any one stage are going to have a condition of some kind. Certainly, people we're interacting with every day are going to have a condition. So the question is what can you do? What can you do to be more accepting, but not just accepting, but inclusive of people with a disability? And maybe I was an accountant in another life because I think about numbers and percentages a lot, but I think about the impact on our community and the cost to our community of not being inclusive. Having 2 million Australians not in the workforce because of their condition, that's a significant impact on Centrelink and our welfare system. It's a significant impact on the amount of tax that you pay, and I certainly know that as business people, you're always looking at ways to get out of paying more tax. And perhaps if you're not doing that, minimise tax. Well, minimise tax, thank you. But look, that's not to say that that's not a good business strategy, but if we didn't have to pay as much tax in the first place, it wouldn't be as big an impact on even you. So 2 million Australians not working because of their condition, and you guys are a bunch of employers who may have the ability to be more inclusive. The flow-on effect of what you guys can do goes so much more beyond the individual, but the whole community can benefit from making an adjustment of some kind of yourselves. And certainly the more inclusive we're becoming as a society, the more positive that is on the communities as well. And so that's just the very small piece in the puzzle, or the pie, or the drop in the ocean of what I do at USQ. But I'm providing an opportunity to somebody who may, in the past, may never have had the opportunity to study because adjustments weren't available to them. But if we can provide them with a high level of education, skills to get into a job that they may previously have not been able to do. And again, somebody with a physical disability may not be able to be a builder or a tradie of some sort, but if we can give them an education at a higher level, they may be a very skilled engineer or something, and they'll end up being a builder's boss. And so there's real opportunity for people with conditions to get higher education. They might come and talk to me. We can talk about what adjustments and what we can do to help them get through their university degree. USQ is number 1 in Australia for university dropouts. And it's actually a bit of a strength in the university. We're number 1 in Australia, from a negative perspective, we're the worst university in Australia for people from low SES backgrounds and dropping out of university. But on the flip side, we are also the best university in Australia at being inclusive and accepting of those, yeah. So the two sort of go hand in hand. But being a regional university, being well placed within the university community, we have a lot of opportunity, we have a lot of staff and resources available for people to come to university and have a go, and we'll provide opportunity for somebody to gain a higher education that they may previously been unable to do. So, look, I could talk all day. The Disability Standards for Education only came out in 2005. It's a 11, 12-year-old legislation. Before then, we didn't even have legislation about being acceptive and inclusive within the education sector. So it's early days and things will improve. But I guess my hope out of all of this is that we provide opportunities to people who previously haven't had an opportunity. And as business people, I guess you have the same opportunity yourselves to be inclusive in some way. And so I'd encourage you just to be a bit more open, think outside the box perhaps in what type of employee you're looking for. If there's a certain skill set that might be able to be done or used or demonstrated by somebody with a disability, it might actually be an asset to your business rather than what's the opposite of an asset?
Detriment. Liability.
Liability, thank you. Somebody with a disability is not necessarily a liability to any your business, and if it was, it might only really need just a small bit of tweaking or adjustment to the way that they do the job, and they may then all of a sudden become an asset. And then we have a benefit to the community of being accepting of people with a disability and providing jobs to people who may not previously have jobs. So that's what I do. It's very unique, I understand that. There's one or a group of me at every university, but we have students who get to their third and fourth year of study, and then they find out that I exist, and they come into me for one of these meetings, and they say, "Man, I've been struggling through university the last 3 years because I didn't know you were there." And often we'll even look at their results after they've had some communication with us and put in a small adjustment, and all of a sudden their results are improving and they're graduating. So as more and more people become aware that we are doing what we can to increase opportunity for people, hopefully the flow-on effect will benefit the community. But
Now, John, I have to ask you to stop talking and take questions.
sure, no problem. So happy to answer any questions.
What support is out there for these people between leaving university and coming to me as an employer?
Yeah, good question. There are a number of support agencies around town, and we'll be familiar with a lot of them. We've got United Care, just any community organisation is a support agency. Many of them do disability supports in different ways. Some of them are employment support agencies, an occupational therapist. They're the people who do the adjustments or provide information on how to do adjustments for somebody within a workplace. We've all heard of OTs, occupational therapists. They're the support areas. There are grants and funding available to help businesses make adjustments for people with a disability to work within those environments. If there's equipment needed for that person, there is money and access you can get for that sort of thing. And again, it's individualised. It's going to depend on the person's condition and what type of business you are as to what will be available to you.
What's the university doing in terms of promote your roles and students don't get to 3 years?
That's right. So I've only been in my role for 12 months. One of the things that I do is this to all the different areas within the university. So I sort of, every few weeks I go to like staff meetings of the different faculties or different work areas, and I'm promoting what we do. We've been working on a training video, and to have all the stars in one of those videos, which was a funny twist of events when I'm meeting here again today. So we're releasing a video that's actually going to be available Australia-wide for universities about being inclusive in their teaching strategies. One of the benefits of going online with education is that increases inclusiveness. So students with a sight impairment, perhaps by having our material online means that it's electronic, they can use text-to-speech software, so the computer will read them the information. So somebody who's blind who can't read it themselves, an electronic voice like Siri on your mobile phone will read it to them. That's inclusive. So the university is making a lot of steps towards making our materials accessible to all people. And I go around and I do promotions of our service. I speak at orientation weeks. Every opportunity I get, I try and provide people with information that the service is available to them.
The one for people that have disability of some sort, do they know or acknowledge that they've got that problem? Because I said before, if I'm looking about everything down right, I don't fall.
We can cancel two people. I'm not sure maybe the third person.
Look, that's a really good question.
How would we as an employer know, like if a person came in to apply for a job,
Yep.
how would we know that this ain't told us
A survey was done last year, I think it was by the University of Sydney, and they looked at people who are in my job. Now, I don't have a disability myself. And what they did is they interviewed people in my role and they asked, if you had a disability and you were going for a job, would you disclose? And 75%, I don't making that stat up, but the majority of them said that they wouldn't disclose that they had a disability. So even though they work in a job like mine, there's still a lot of resistance to whether they should disclose to a potential employer. And I think that study sort of showed was that in the community there's still a lot of negativity towards employing people with a disability. People's mindset about what a disability is, we go straight to them, oh, they're in a wheelchair or they have cerebral palsy, oh, it's going to be too much work to employ them. There's a lot of sort of negative aspects still amongst the community, so people are hesitant to disclose. And I guess we are improving, disclosure levels are increasing. It would be great that if we were all able to disclose what our skills, our strengths and what our weaknesses are. But we live in a society where you really need to sell only your strengths. If you go to an interview, you don't want to talk to your potential employer about your weaknesses.
But as an employer, we can't help if we don't know someone comes in the door.
Yeah.
If we're not trained up to recognise that they can't get their message across
Yeah.
or something. I think the onus is on those people to walk in and say, look, I have this disability, I don't think it's going to impact on this job.
Yeah.
You know,
I absolutely agree with you. I do think it's the responsibility on the individual to disclose. But where we can all play a role in that is in how we conduct ourselves and the way we speak. That's going to be more accepting of people opening up to that sort of thing. And I think that even comes down to language. You know, I even hear people within my friendship circle, people within my outside work circle, they'll often make comments like, oh, that person's a retard, or they're stupid, they're dumb. You know, these are terms that when you're in my work area are actually specifically referring to an individual. Somebody who is retarded. I know it's an old term, but somebody who has that medical condition, that's a very negative thing to hear. They're dumb, it means they can't speak. So when I talk to somebody who can't speak and I use a sign interpreter, but if I'm talking about, oh, they're just dumb, I'm actually offending that person. And so that's the language that I use, and that's contributing to people not disclosing. So I think we just need to even be a little bit mindful about when we're referring to negativity in life, that we don't associate it with somebody with a disability. Oh, they're spastic. Spastic is somebody who has cerebral palsy. It's a birth defect. They have no mental deficit at all, somebody with cerebral palsy. It's purely a physical disorder. So if you go, oh, they're just a spastic, they're hearing what you're saying, they're very aware. And so I think that if we are more polite in the way that we speak, the more accepting we are of these people and not using certain disabilities as a derogatory term, we're going to improve people's prospects because they'll disclose more readily because we're talking in a more inclusive way as well. So yes, I do believe the onus is on the individual to disclose, but I think we play a role in that in the way that we conduct ourselves.
I just want to clarify, you did at the beginning, you said 1 in 5 will have some type of disability in their life yeah, I think we
Yeah,
should
thanks for clearing
clarify
that
that. Because I think they're all looking at each other like, you know,
1 in 5 of us will have a mental health condition at some stage.
at some stage, yeah.
But the statistic is only just slightly less than 1 in 5 to have a disability as a whole within our life as well. So mental health is very prevalent, 1 in 5 within our lifetime, but it's only just less than 1 in 5. I think it's 17 or 18% disability within our life.
I think this club here would be higher than you take the 2 real estate agents out, it'd be much higher.
Good on you. Thank you.
I think that does us. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jack.